Peace and blessings in this corner box at 24. Good morning, everyone. How is everyone doing today? Hope all is well. I'm doing good. God is good. God is great. And I have no complaints for the day. So, listen, man. I wasn't going to make a video on this, but I have to, man, because I got to just clear up some things. And, I just want to say, man, please subscribe to the page in this corner box in 24. If you have any comments, likes, dislikes, let me know so I can make things better. And if you like the page, definitely subscribe to the page. And if you have any comments, man, just hit me, let me know, all right? So what I'm going to chime on in today is Derrick James, the trainer of Errol Spence Jr., the unified welterweight champion, making a statement recently, and I think I did a video on this prior, but it came up again. I saw it on Aki TV, where he's talking about that, what Derrick James said about how Crawford and his athleticism is going to fail him the same way it did with Roy Jones. So basically, Derrick James is saying Roy Jones was very athletic, but it failed him. So basically, he's disrespecting Roy Jones. So he's saying that that's the same fate that Terrence Crawford is going to have, even though they're two different fighters, man, right? So we're going to break that down. We're going to talk about that. Terrence Crawford and Roy Jones are not the same fighter. Just like, I don't know why people are making comparison. I get it a little bit with him and Jaron Edis. Two different fighters. Two different fighters. But I could see it more with Jaron Edis because of the way he sets up when he's in the orthodox stance. I see it. I see what people are saying because of his stature, his length, and the way he sets up in the orthodox stance. I see that part. But the way he goes about what he does, totally different, right? But we're not talking about that right now. We're going to talk about Jaron Edis, coming up. But anyway, we're going to just deal with this with Derrick James, right? So let me say this about Roy Jones. Right? Roy Jones was more than athletic. He had power, speed, and great ring IQ. Okay, that's more than being athletic, man. He had a lot going for him. And his defense wasn't the greatest, but he had some defense. All right? Good footwork. He could move around the ring. Roy Jones was more than athletic. All right? So here's the thing. Roy Jones fought John Ruiz for the heavyweight championship. And he put on muscle. Over 20 pounds, almost 30 pounds of muscle. He was chiseled, man, at heavyweight, right? Looked good. And he beat the brakes off of John Ruiz in 2003 of March, right? Beat the brakes off of John Ruiz. Everybody was surprised. I mean, just dominated John Ruiz. You got to remember, John Ruiz was a rugged, rough heavyweight. He didn't have the best skill, but he could hurt you. He could knock you out. He's still a heavyweight, man. 200 pounds, 2 and change. Like, he still could hurt you. And he'd been in fights, man, where, he got hit with some stuff and he still came back. So he had more than a puncher's chance in that fight with Roy Jones. He could have really did some damage to Roy Jones. But Roy Jones totally outboxed him, right? So now Roy Jones beats John Ruiz, March of 2003. He's at the post-fight press conference. Tarver comes in there, gets in his head. Instead of Roy Jones just saying, man, listen, I'm celebrating my post-fight, man. I'll talk to you later. He let Tarver get in his head. Tarver knew what he was doing, okay? They knew what they were doing. So he gets in his head, and Roy Jones responds, that he was going to fight him, that you're going to be next. Because Tarver said, yo, when am I going to get my shot? When am I going to get my shot, Roy Jones? I wouldn't even pay him no mind, but Roy Jones fed into it. And he said, you next. Man, make that fight. 8 months down the line. Now, mind you, Roy Jones was a middleweight, super middleweight, 168, and became a light heavyweight. He's not used to going up and coming back down, because once he went from 160 to 168, that's where he was at. And he didn't, his 160 was the main part of his career. 168, he stayed there for a few, then he went up to 175. But he was going up in weight. That's different than going up, going down, going up, going down. He never did that, right? He stayed at that weight. So when he went up to 199, 200 pounds, and put on all that muscle, right? Then you're going to squeeze off all of that weight, all that muscle, and fight Tarver in 8 months. He fought Tarver in 8 months, right? Remember, he got a majority decision when he fought Tarver, 8 months after John Ruiz. He barely won the fight. It was very close. And you could see he was fighting off of sheer willpower. His energy was zapped. He didn't look that good. He barely made it out of that fight. Tarver caught him with some shots. He caught Tarver with some shots, but he barely made it out of that fight. He's lucky. Very lucky, right? And I said, man, that fight was too quick. I could see it. Roy Jones wasn't there. So then, what happens? Then he fights him again. 6 months down the line. No, man, you just fought him in 8 months after John Ruiz. So now you're going to fight. You should have fought him in you should have gave yourself at least a year to get back adjusted to that weight. Then fight Tarver. But they jumped on it because they knew Roy Jones was going to be the same, right? So now 8 months you fight him. Then you fight him again in 6 months? No, after that? No, man. Definitely give yourself 8 months to a year, right? 9 months, maybe 9 months to a year, man, because that fight was close, man. So give us some time now. You know what I mean? Because you fought him, right? No, he fights him in 6 months. What happens? He gets knocked out. Cold knocked out, right? Okay. You thought that was enough. What does he do? 4 months after that, 4 months, he gets back in the ring, trying to prove something, and gets knocked out by who? Glenn Johnson, who's not a knockout puncher. At the time that he fought Roy Jones, he only had 12 knockouts on his record. 12 knockouts in like 30-something fights. Okay? He's not a knockout dude at all. He don't knock dudes out with no one shot, definitely. He knocked Roy Jones out. That tells you right there, man, that he has slipped. Right? He slipped. But more so, I believe it was because he went up in that weight and he came back down so fast, it was like a crash. He wasn't ready to get in the ring, man. He should have given himself at least a year to fight Tarver. Then he would have been more adjusted. But he did it in 8 months, and you come back in 6 months, and then you fight Glenn Johnson in 4 months. So you're talking about 3 fights in a year and a half. 3 fights after coming from heavyweight. That's just too much. That's just too much. So after he got knocked out by Tarver, it was like a cycle. He just kept getting knocked out. Now he was open to be knocked out, right? And then once Glenn Johnson was a natural middleweight, right? That moved up. So when he knocked out Roy Jones, I knew he was pretty much done. But that had nothing to do with the athleticism. That had to do with what I believe is him not being adjusted back to that weight and fighting too fast. And then he tried to prove something because there's no way. Tarver's legit because Tarver's a big dude. He's a southpaw, and you know he can punch. So him knocking Roy Jones out, I don't really have too much problem with that, right? But Glenn Johnson, who's not a knockout puncher, who don't knock people out like that, and definitely not with one shot, that's when I knew Roy Jones had slipped. Okay, so that's really what that's about. Now, Derrick James, Terrence Crawford, and Roy Jones is not the same. 2 different fighters, 2 different weights, 2 different styles, 2 different demeanors. Crawford likes to fight, according to Shakur Stevenson, his stablemate. Like he likes to fight. He loves fights, right? And Crawford, you know, is a southpaw. He can switch to southpaw. Got power, got speed. Ring IQ is crazy, very intelligent. He can fight going backwards. He's different than Roy Jones. So if you think that that's going to win you the fight because you comparing him to Roy Jones, that's not going to happen, man. And all I would say to Derrick James, man, listen, just make the fight. We don't want to hear, I know me, I don't want to hear about Errol Spence waking up at 5 a.m., hitting the heavy bag, working out, calling out Terrence Crawford finally, because you wasn't saying nothing about Terrence Crawford prior to this. You wasn't saying nothing about Terrence Crawford prior to what you did with Ugas. And all of y'all jumping on the bandwagon because he beat a stationary fighter that was standing right in front of him and he broke his over the bone. Okay. I mean, anybody could break somebody's over the bone. If I keep hitting you in the face and you ain't defending, I could break your eye, break your socket. I could do that too. That's nothing. Okay, so that's what he did to Ugas. Ugas was standing right there. He didn't go from side to side. He didn't give him no movement. He didn't back up. He stood right there the whole time. He counted a little bit. He landed 94 punches, man, in 10 rounds, man, on Earl Spence. That was nothing. And when he knocked the mouthpiece out, he didn't capitalize on it. Like Jerron Ennis said, he didn't have no killer instinct. So I'm not impressed with that. I'm just being honest. Yeah, Earl Spence looked good. He looked like his regular self. But he had the kind of fighter to complement that. See, if you complement my fight style, then what am I impressed about? Just like I said yesterday in the video about Tyson Fury, Dylan Wright is not a good boxer. He's not a good mover. So him getting knocked out by uppercut was complimentary of what? He complimented Tyson Fury's skill level. You stood right there, my man, and got tapped with an uppercut. It wasn't a push, it was the uppercut that got you. The push is what he does, but come on, man. Anyway, listen, Derrick James, cut the crap. All right? Earl Spence, I don't care about you working out and talking about Terrence Crawford and running and showing. Man, listen, just make the fight. That's all we want to see. Just make the fight. Okay? Make the fight. I got Terrence Crawford beating you, man. Maybe stopping you. He's different, man. All right? He's different. So all the talk about his athleticism, just make the fight. And that's what we want to see. Okay? Peace and blessings in this Corner Boxing 24. And everyone have a nice day. Enjoy the rest of your day. Like I said, subscribe to the page. Leave your comments. Let me know how you feel. All right? Peace and blessings.